Welcome to the next edition of our Foundation Speaker Series. I'm Amber Goss, and today I'm thrilled to be able to spend some time with my personal friend and longtime friend of our organization, Mr. Jeremy Raichle. Jeremy has been working in the banking industry for 15 years. Professionally, he is a senior commercial banker at TD Bank. When Jeremy is not helping his clients procure loans in the Mid-Atlantic region, which consists of DC, Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia, you can find him on the golf course or rooting on any of the Philadelphia sports teams. A fellow PFEW alum himself, Jeremy also joins us every summer as a company advisor and speaker for the stockholders presentation. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Since you're a PFEW alum, just like me, let's start with how PFEW impacted you and why you chose to attend.
Sure. I mean, I think about the first time I attended, which actually was the summer of 1998. I mean, high school, looking at a bunch of different things, I kind of had a general interest in business, right? I didn't have any money and I wanted to find out how to get money. And I thought learning about business would be that route to success or so. I mean, for perspective, my mom or dad weren't really so much in the business. My mom was a security checkpoint admin for Novartis down there in the Philly region. And my dad was a shipping and receiving. So I just kind of, not having a lot of money, I just kind of wanted to get some money. And for perspective in high school too, I mean, I kind of checked some different boxes. I explored some things. I went to tech school for a year or so. That didn't really kindle some stuff. So really, I looked at PFEW as an opportunity to expand my interest in business. Now, the impact, as I kind of look back some 20 plus years or so ago, I look at leadership, I look at competition, I look at social skills, I look at sort of the catalyst for my education as well. I mean, the leadership opportunities in PFEW, especially as a participant, I helped lead the finance strategy. I mean, that was sort of a catalyst to sort of just building on that interest, and sort of the perspective, just sort of from the leadership perspective of what I wanted to be when I grew up, kind of looking at the other students, the other participants that were going through. So just seeing these people that are highly motivated just kind of kindled that interest. From a competition perspective, luckily, our team actually won top company that year. So I think that helped fuel that fire a little bit, which also resonated years later when I became top 10 sales leader for M&T Bank in 2015. Social skills. I kind of look at social skills, there's maybe not a major accolade, it's just sort of having that drive or that interest to interact with different people in different social settings. At PFEW, we're immersed into all kinds of social settings with a bunch of strangers, 15, 20 kids or so, and that kind of helps build to what I do today as a commercial lender, just shaking hands, reaching out to people that don't know me, and then just working internally here at the bank, just trying to work together from different backgrounds. I feel like PFEW really helped out in that regard. And I think from education as sort of that catalyst for the interest in finance. I tell you what, coming into PFEW in 1998, I knew absolutely zero about finance. Maybe you could argue I took an accounting class and maybe one other business class, but I knew next to nothing. But I'd say today, I arguably have one of the most prestigious finance professional designations out there, known as the CFA charter holder. So that's to kind of build on that. That's sort of the impact there is leadership, competition, social skills, and education.
And I know one of your biggest accolades is having that CFA, charter holder. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and how you achieved it?
Sure. I mean, it's kind of two-pronged, right? The big thing is the education piece. And if you think way back when I was in high school or whatever, first of all, I never even heard about it. And just having decent grades and at least not trying to, I guess, generally speaking, no matter what year you were talking about with me in school, I always kind of wanted that A range type schooling. If I felt it was dropping a little bit, I would heat up a little bit. In high school, for perspective, especially those that are listening, high school 3.75 GPA, which for that school was an A minus, right on the low end of low A minus. Again, I told you I was just in one or two business classes. And I even did that year at tech school. So from high school, just kind of going through the paces, not really doing anything, but just kind of moving along. At the end of high school, going into my senior years when I did PFEW, which was the interest of business. So then that got me into, I actually went to Lycoming College, which hosts PFEW. And I thought that was a good connection into business. So I gave Lycoming a shot. And much like high school, 3.67 GPA, that's the A- category for that college. And I would argue actually the lower grades were in the non-business classes. And I'm telling you, especially the last year or two, I was getting 4.0s in business. So, and I was taking all these management finance courses, especially towards the end, kind of top of the class, people were respecting me. And I think internships were key too. Doing stuff in DC, went to England for an internship, and actually went to Sovereign Bank. This is all still sort of on the educational path too. And then of course in grad school, following that path from Lycoming College to RIT, did that in 1 year. And I tell you what, and as much as I really like Lycoming College and I got good grades, I really set the goal for me, still not even knowing at this point about what the CFA charter holder was. I really wanted a 4.0. And I got one. I did. It was a 1 year MS in Finance, Master of Science in Finance program at RIT. And I had a big goal of getting a 4.0, and that's what I got. And I'm very proud about that as well. So, and actually the funny point about RIT, this was like the last nail in there for the CFA. The first class that I had there was sort of accounting 101 in grad school. And the professor said, well, your MS in Finance is kind of worthless without a CFA. And I hate standardized tests. But then I started thinking about it more and more. And, a year after grad school, I started doing the CFA charter holder. So that's huge.
It is. It's a very prestigious award. And I know you're no stranger to hard work. You've worked at several well-established banks throughout your career. So can you tell me about how your time at each of these affected your success today?
Sure, yeah. And actually, to kind of bridge what we were just talking about the CFA, the other component that is work experience. So on the work experience, if I just think about it, and just sort of how I'm a banker, and it really doesn't matter what you want to be when you grow up, just kind of decide what your path is. But I can kind of tell you those points in my discussion on how I work through my work experience. I mentioned through my education, I had some internship opportunities. And the funny story about one of these stories that I had was my senior year at Lycoming College. We were doing local internships just for maybe a couple of months or so. And Merrill Lynch had a branch out there, and I think it's still there here today. And I went in there, and they said, you know what? Basically, all you're going to be doing here over the next couple of months or so is filing paperwork. You could do it. You will certainly welcome you here, but maybe talk to the commercial bank across the street, which is Sovereign Bank, which is now Santander. So I actually chose the credit analyst internship. So without that, I couldn't have probably gotten my first true analyst job at Harleysville National Bank. And I did that for a year. And that's really the first stepping stone to becoming some kind of commercial lender that I am today. And so I did the Harleysville National Banks, working through financial statements, industry analysis, company analysis. Then I went to grad school, and then I came back to work. And I think with those two work experiences in mind, plus the grad school experience, I then got into one of the training programs at M&T Bank. It's called the Relationship Manager Sales Program, which is deeply involved in credit, analytical stuff, similar to what I was doing with Harleysville. But also got you out on the line as a relationship manager, as a commercial lender. There was also, how do I describe this? So actually what happened, that's a really good job. That was in State College, Pennsylvania, and I'm very proud of that opportunity. That towards the end of 4 years or so, that's where the economic crisis was hitting from the real estate crisis back in 08, 09, 10. And I saw an opportunity, and I was studying the CFA. I went up to Buffalo for 2 years, and I was actually doing investor relations work up there for 2 years. Now, this is also a life lesson thing, too, is you start to realize, and everyone has these moments in their life, what do you like, what you don't like. I really liked the experience and exposure I had up there in M&T, up in Buffalo. But what I really missed was getting out on the line and talking to people. And what I didn't like is sitting in front of a computer for 40, 60 hours, whatever the number was, right? I just didn't like sitting in front of the computer all the time. So I came back out on the line, as they call it. And then I did corporate banking for M&T for close to 5 years down in Baltimore. And I mentioned I got that 2015 designation for top salesman of the year, which is huge. And then the funny story with that is I started traveling around the country on that corporate banking job. I remember socializing, networking out in Chicago and someone didn't even recognize the bank that I was working at, which was M&T. So, I thought about that over years, and finally I connected with Wells Fargo in Baltimore. So I was doing still commercial lending, but for all of Maryland, which was great. But now I actually have something on my resume that's very reputable, or at least more well known. And so that was really good. There was probably a couple other things. One, I did take a little bit of a risk with a small community bank, and I thought I had a manager job. Didn't quite pan out. And then what I actually got is where I am now at TD Bank. So without all these, without hitting all these points in my career, now I'm actually a commercial lender for a bigger region. So now I'm the Mid-Atlantic senior commercial lender for TD Bank. That covers Delaware, Maryland, DC, and Virginia for companies that are a little bit larger than what I was dealing with at Wells Fargo. So from a career trajectory, I kind of think about all those points in succession. It'd be great if you can go from one point to the end point, but it doesn't exactly work that way. So it kind of works in succession.
Now, Jeremy, for some of the kids who might not know exactly what a commercial lender does, can you elaborate on that just a little bit for them?
Certainly. So just like you as a personal customer of a bank, there are commercial customers. Think about, the restaurant you go to, or Microsoft, or whatever company. Maybe your mom, dad works for a company in an industrial park. Each one of those entities has a relationship manager or a commercial lender that they can talk to on a regular basis. That is their point of contact. So for all of their needs, so ABC Corporation needs to talk to someone like me. Mm-hmm. And if they need a loan, if they need deposits, if they need to get networked to the bank for any other kinds of reasons, I'm their primary point of contact.
And that's great. And I appreciate you elaborating on that. And I know we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about how you worked your way up to being the vice president at TD. So I know that takes a lot of motivation to get to where you are. Can you tell us what motivated you to keep holding this leadership role, or what additional experiences helped you climb that corporate ladder to get to where you are today?
Sure. I mean, I am in banking, so definitely worth admitting there is a monetary incentive in my brain. So this is a pretty good job and pays pretty well. So that motivates me. But I would also say, as I kind of think about that time when I was at Buffalo and I came back down to Baltimore from M&T, what I really learned, I really like that balance between the people skills sort of side of things and also the analytical component. So I would argue half of my job is kind of sitting down, looking at numbers, trying to analyze. I always work with the credit team all the time, trying to find a way to win, try to analyze the numbers, trying to make sure ratios are in line so that we can do business with them. But then the other side of my job is driving around. And I know the situation that we're living in right now, but I like getting out there, going to dinners, cocktail hours, networking, getting to know people, and then eventually, hopefully maybe getting them to be business customers. So those are probably that's just, I don't know, I just kind of feel like that's life, right? Getting out there, socializing, and getting to know people. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah. And we all know life comes with a lot of bumps along the way, but you've obviously navigated them well over the years. Is there any advice you would give to our students who want to make it up that corporate ladder, or that just want to pursue a career in banking in general?
Sure. I think there's a few pieces of advice as I think, and it's all kind of learned over time. I wish I had all this advice when I was, 18 years old, 20, 25, 30. I feel like I'm still getting advice from different people that are above me right now. So I would advise persistence is key. I think about something like the M&T job that I was interested in, State College, straight out of undergrad. I applied to the same commercial banking job in about 6 different locations, all in Pennsylvania. And I got a phone call out of the blue saying, well, it doesn't look like you're going to get these other geographies, but do you want to go to State College? Yeah, great. So persistence, just applying all over the place. And there's various stories for that, but I think persistence is a big one. And as I think about that, kind of be flexible too. I think about my family and they stay in Philadelphia all the time, and that's great. I think where I've delivered on some opportunities is being flexible, especially from a geography perspective. I mentioned that M&T opportunity. I kind of just wanted a job out of grad school, a good one, but I was flexible to the geography. I've made similar moves as well. I mean, even this TD Bank move, I was living in Baltimore and I wanted to find a job, and I moved down to the DC area. So I live in Northern Virginia right now. If you would have talked to me this time a year ago, I never thought I would live in Northern Virginia, but the opportunity presented itself and I capitalized it. So persistence, flexibility, maybe take some risks. I mean, some of the stuff that I was just talking about is kind of taking some risks. I think about even going down to Baltimore too for M&T. I didn't know anyone in Baltimore. That's a little bit of a risk. I liked the job. I came down. But you know what, as much as, and I'm in finance, right? And I know the stock market and all this stuff. And I always been bothered by people that tell all the positive stories, but I'll tell you a couple of negatives. So there are a couple failures too, but you learn from yourself from sort of the negatives and the positives. And I'll tell you, I took a risk moving to Allentown too. That's when I was the commercial banking analyst for Harleysville National Bank. One, I knew that was a short-term period of time, but I was in a lousy apartment. I mean, I was working 60 hours a day, maybe more actually, if I count them up. And it really grinded me. And so that I would say that that's not the greatest situation. I would say also, even the year before that was probably my first year out of undergrad from Lycoming College, and I didn't do anything related to my career. I was helping out my aunt's sister run a day spa, unrelated to banking, totally unrelated to banking. I kind of knew it was short term, but I kind of look at those as my failures. So I do want to emphasize the successes, but let's recognize sort of the challenges that I went through as well. Maybe like two more words of advice too. I'm thinking about just raise your hand. There's a presenter at PFEW that I would see all the time, and he'd always say, if you just raise your hand in class, that's a guaranteed B. And it kind of works in work too. And it helps in networking, getting to know people. If you're looking to get referrals to other areas of the bank, that's huge as well. So just raise your hand. I've done that many times throughout my career. And my last piece of advice is treat every day like a new day. It sounds very simple, but everyone is on a different playing field at any given day. They could be 60 years old. They could be 20 years old. They could be they could be head of Facebook at 20, 25 years old, but the guy at 60 years old he could be my father and shipping and receiving for a company. So just recognize where you are, like a game of golf. Wherever that lie for golf is, look ahead, find out where you want to go, but move forward and take today as your new day. Those are probably my words of advice.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. That's very insightful, and we appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to be with us today, and we appreciate you being part of the Foundation family.
Certainly. Thank you so much for having me.
If you're interested in connecting with Jeremy, or if you have additional questions about careers in banking or finance, he'd be happy to have you reach out to him. We'll be displaying Jeremy's contact information at the end of this video, or you can find him on LinkedIn. You can also reach out to the PFEW offices to be connected with him. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, everyone.